Dr. Marcus Ashford stands at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse overlooking Manhattan, watching the city lights blur into meaningless streaks. He's built an empire in pharmaceuticals. His company, Ashford BioMedical, has developed treatments that saved millions of lives worldwide. 17 patents, 4 breakthrough cancer drugs, a net worth that crossed $2 billion before he turned 45. None of it matters now. Behind him, down the marble hallway lined with awards and accolades, his 10-year-old son is dying. And all the money in the world, all the research, all the connections to the best specialists on the planet can't stop it. The diagnosis came 18 months ago. Glioblastoma multiforme, an aggressive brain tumor wrapped around critical areas that made surgery impossible. Stage 4. The doctors gave them 12 months, maybe 18 if they were lucky. They tried everything: chemotherapy, radiation, immunotherapy, experimental trials that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars per treatment. Marcus called in favors from colleagues across 3 continents. He flew in specialists from Germany, Japan, Switzerland. He funded a research team specifically focused on his son's exact tumor mutation. Nothing worked. The tumor kept growing, slowly at first, then faster. And now, 2 weeks ago, the head of oncology at Memorial Sloan Kettering sat Marcus down and delivered the final verdict. "Mr. Ashford, I'm so sorry. There's nothing more we can do. Daniel's tumor has progressed beyond any intervention. His neurological function is declining rapidly. Based on the latest scans, he has approximately 2 weeks, maybe less." 2 weeks. Marcus had stared at the doctor, waiting for him to say something else, offer one more option, one more trial, one more hope. But the man just sat there with that practiced expression of medical sympathy, the one they teach in residency for moments like this. Marcus didn't cry, didn't shout, just stood up, shook the doctor's hand, and walked out. That was 14 days ago, which means his son Daniel has perhaps hours left, maybe one day if they're lucky. Marcus turns from the window and walks down the hallway. The penthouse is silent except for the soft hum of medical equipment. He's transformed the largest guest room into a private hospital suite. State-of-the-art monitors, oxygen supply, medication dispensers, a hospital bed that cost more than most people's cars. Daniel lies in that bed now, small and pale against white sheets. His head is wrapped in soft bandages covering the scars from the failed surgeries. His eyes are closed, his breathing shallow and labored. An IV drips steadily into his thin arm. He looks nothing like the boy who used to run through these halls, who loved building robots and reading about space exploration, who wanted to be an astronaut when he grew up. That boy is gone. What remains is a shell, barely conscious, slipping away a little more each hour. Marcus has watched hundreds of patients decline in his career as a pharmaceutical executive. He's seen the data, the charts, the inevitable trajectory of terminal illness. He thought he understood it. He understood nothing. Watching your own child die is different. It's not clinical. It's not data. It's watching every breath become harder, every moment of consciousness become rarer, every piece of the person you love disappear until there's almost nothing left. Marcus sits in the chair beside Daniel's bed, the same chair he's sat in every night for months. He reaches out and takes his son's hand, careful not to disturb the IV line. "I'm sorry," he whispers. "I'm so sorry I couldn't save you." Daniel doesn't respond, hasn't responded in 3 days. The doctors say he's barely conscious now, that his brain function is shutting down, that he probably can't hear anything anymore. But Marcus talks anyway, because stopping feels like giving up. And he's not ready to do that. Not yet. The door opens quietly. Maria Rodriguez enters carrying a tray with soup and bread. She's been the family housekeeper for 5 years, hired back when Daniel was healthy and Marcus's wife Elena was still alive. Elena, dead 4 years now from a sudden aneurysm, gone before the ambulance even arrived. Marcus had been at a conference in London. He'd missed her last moments completely. And now he's about to miss Daniel's last moments too. Not physically, he's here, but emotionally, he checked out months ago. He sees it in Maria's eyes every time she looks at him, the way she moves through the penthouse like a ghost, keeping everything running while he slowly falls apart. "You need to eat," Maria says softly, setting the tray on the table beside him. "I'm not hungry." "You haven't eaten in 2 days, Mr. Ashford. You're going to make yourself sick." "I don't care." Maria stands there for a moment, looking at Daniel, then at Marcus. Her face shows something Marcus can't quite read. Sadness, yes, but something else too, something that looks almost like determination. "He's getting worse," Marcus says flatly. "The hospice nurse said maybe 24 hours now. His kidneys are starting to fail." Maria nods slowly. She walks to the other side of Daniel's bed and does something unexpected. She places her hand gently on his forehead, not checking for fever, just touching him with a tenderness that makes Marcus's throat tighten. "He's still here," she says quietly. "He can still feel love." Marcus doesn't respond. What's the point? Love won't save his son. Science won't save his son. Nothing will save his son. Maria leaves silently. Marcus sits alone in the dim room, holding Daniel's cooling hand, and watches the monitors count down the final hours of his son's life. Outside, Manhattan pulses with life. Millions of people going about their business, completely unaware that in this penthouse, in this room, a father is losing everything that matters. Marcus Ashford, billionaire pharmaceutical executive man who built an empire saving lives, sits powerless as the only life that truly matters slips through his fingers, and there's nothing, absolutely nothing, he can do to stop it. The cameras were installed 6 months ago after the 4th caregiver was caught stealing. Marcus hadn't wanted to believe it at first. Medications going missing, small items disappearing, cash from Elena's jewelry box, the one Marcus kept locked in his study as a memorial. Then he'd found the nurse selling Daniel's prescription painkillers online. High-grade morphine, dilaudid, medications his dying son needed for comfort, being hawked to addicts for profit. He'd fired her immediately, called the police, pressed charges, but the damage was done. Trust was gone. So Marcus installed the system. 16 cameras throughout the penthouse, motion sensors in every room, audio monitoring in the medical suite, live feed accessible from his phone, his laptop, anywhere in the world. It felt invasive, wrong, but what choice did he have? The 5th caregiver lasted 2 weeks before Marcus caught her on camera going through his files in the study. She claimed she was looking for paper, but the footage showed her photographing financial documents. Industrial espionage. Someone had paid her to spy on Ashford BioMedical's research. The 6th caregiver was better, professional, kind to Daniel. But after 3 weeks, Marcus discovered she was leaking information to tabloids. Photos of Daniel's decline. Details about Marcus's private life. Everything sold to the highest bidder. The 7th caregiver was a registered nurse, highly recommended, excellent credentials. She lasted 1 month before Marcus found her attempting to access his computer system, trying to steal pharmaceutical formulas worth millions. After that, Marcus stopped trusting anyone. The 8th caregiver stayed for 2 months, but barely interacted with Daniel. Just did the minimum, collected her paycheck, treated his dying son like a job instead of a human being. The 9th caregiver was elderly, grandmotherly, seemed perfect, but Marcus discovered she was over-medication Daniel, keeping him sedated beyond what the doctors prescribed, making him comfortable by essentially keeping him unconscious. When Marcus confronted her, she'd said, "It's a mercy, the boy is suffering. This way he doesn't feel it." Marcus had fired her on the spot. Daniel's last days would not be spent in a drug-induced fog. If his son was going to die, he would die aware, present, conscious of being loved, even if that love came from a father who'd failed him. The 10th caregiver quit after 1 week, said the job was too depressing, just walked out without notice, leaving Daniel alone for 6 hours until Marcus could rush home from a meeting. The 11th caregiver was actually stealing food. Not valuables, not medication, food. Marcus found her packing groceries into her bag late at night. When confronted, she broke down, crying. 3 children. At home. Husband left, working 2 jobs. She needed this position but couldn't afford to feed her family. Marcus gave her a month's severance and let her go. He couldn't have someone desperate enough to steal in his home, no matter how sympathetic the reason. 11 caregivers in 18 months. 11 failures, 11 breaches of trust. So now Marcus watches the cameras obsessively. Every night after Daniel falls into his fitful sleep, Marcus sits in his study with his laptop open, reviewing footage, checking, watching, making sure whoever is in his home isn't stealing, isn't betraying him, isn't treating his dying son like an inconvenience. The surveillance has become a ritual. His nightly torture, watching strangers move through his home, caring for his son with professional detachment, collecting their paychecks and leaving. None of them love Daniel. Why would they? He's not their child. He's just a job. A sad, depressing job that pays well but costs too much emotionally. Marcus understands this logically, but emotionally, it destroys him. His son is dying, surrounded by people who don't really care, and the one person who should be fully present, Marcus himself, has emotionally checked out because the pain is too much. The current caregiver is Maria Rodriguez. Not a new hire, she's been the housekeeper for 5 years. But 3 weeks ago, when the 11th caregiver quit, Maria had quietly stepped in. "Let me help with Daniel," she'd said, "until you find someone new." Marcus had been desperate, he'd agreed. Now Maria is the one who sits with Daniel during the day, who administers his medications, who changes his bandages, who talks to him even though he doesn't respond anymore. And Marcus watches her on camera every single night, waiting to catch her doing something wrong. But she doesn't. She just sits there beside Daniel's bed, hour after hour, doing nothing suspicious, nothing worth documenting, just being present. Sometimes she reads to Daniel, sometimes she hums quietly, sometimes she just sits in silence, her hand resting gently on his arm. It's strange, unsettling. Marcus doesn't know what to make of it. In his study now, Marcus opens his laptop and pulls up the live feed. It's nearly midnight. Maria should have left hours ago. Her shift ends at 6, but there she is, still sitting beside Daniel's bed, her head bowed like she's praying. Marcus zooms in slightly. Her lips are moving, but the audio is too quiet to make out words. She's holding something, a small object in her hands. Marcus can't quite see what it is. He watches for several minutes. Maria doesn't move except to occasionally wipe her eyes. She's crying. Marcus leans closer to the screen. Why is she crying? Daniel is barely conscious. He hasn't been responsive in days. What is there to cry about at this point? The grief, he realizes. She's grieving. Actually grieving. Like Daniel is someone she loves, not just someone she's paid to care for. Marcus doesn't know what to do with this information, doesn't know if it's genuine or performance, doesn't know if he can trust it, so he just watches, like he does every night, monitoring, documenting, waiting for the moment when Maria reveals herself to be like all the others. But that moment doesn't come. She just sits there with his dying son, crying quietly in the dark, and Marcus feels something crack open in his chest. something that feels dangerously close to hope. CTA Nerva 1. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Maria Rodriguez had been 32 years old when she lost her daughter, Sophia. 3 years old, bright eyes, infectious laugh, whole life ahead of her. One moment running through the apartment, the next moment seizing on the floor, body convulsing, eyes rolling back. Febrile seizure, the doctors said later, caused by a sudden spike in fever. Rare complication, nothing anyone could have done. Sophia had hit her head when she fell. Skull fracture, brain hemorrhage. Dead before the ambulance arrived. Maria had held her daughter's still body, screaming for her to wake up, begging God to bring her back, promising anything, everything, if Sophia would just open her eyes one more time. But God didn't answer, or maybe he did, and the answer was no. After Sophia died, Maria's husband left, couldn't handle the grief, couldn't look at Maria without seeing their dead daughter. 6 months after the funeral, he filed for divorce. Maria didn't fight it. What was the point? Everything worth fighting for was already gone. She moved from their apartment in Queens to a small studio in the Bronx. Started working whatever jobs she could find, cleaning offices, doing laundry. Eventually, she found work as a housekeeper for wealthy families in Manhattan. The work was simple, straightforward, no emotional attachment, just clean, collect your check, leave. That's how she ended up at the Ashford penthouse 5 years ago. Back then, Daniel was 5 years old, energetic, happy. His mother Elena was alive, warm and kind, the type of employer who treated Maria like a person, not a servant. Maria had kept her distance emotionally, couldn't afford to get attached, couldn't risk caring about someone else's child. When her own was buried in a cemetery she couldn't afford to visit because just seeing the headstone destroyed her. But then Elena died. Sudden, shocking, and Daniel, only 6 years old, was left with a father who buried himself in work to avoid the pain. Maria watched the boy withdraw into himself, watched him stop smiling, watched him move through the penthouse like a ghost, looking for a mother who would never come home. And something in Maria's heart shifted. She started staying later, making Daniel's favorite foods, sitting with him while he ate dinner alone, asking about his day, listening when he talked about feeling sad. She didn't replace Elena. Nobody could. But she showed up, consistently, daily, without expectation of anything in return. Then came Daniel's diagnosis, the tumor, the treatments, the slow, brutal decline. Maria watched Marcus Ashford transform from a driven executive into a hollow shell, watched him hire caregiver after caregiver, each one failing in some way, watched him install cameras and monitors, turning his home into a surveillance prison because trust had been shattered too many times. She understood. She'd lost faith in humanity too after Sophia died. When people kept saying everything happens for a reason, or she's in a better place now, or at least she's not suffering. Empty words, meaningless comfort, nothing helped, nothing healed. So Maria said nothing when Marcus installed the cameras, nothing when he watched her on the feeds every night, nothing when the other caregivers came and went, each one proving his mistrust was justified. She just kept showing up. 3 weeks ago, when the latest caregiver quit, Marcus had been standing in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, desperately calling agencies trying to find a replacement. Maria had walked in with laundry and simply said, "Let me help with Daniel until you find someone." Marcus had looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "You're not trained for medical care." "I raised a daughter," Maria said quietly. "I know how to give medicine, how to change bandages, how to make someone comfortable. This is different. Daniel is dying." "I know." Maria met his eyes. I've watched someone die before. I can do this. Marcus had hesitated, clearly conflicted, but desperation won. Fine, temporarily, until I find a proper nurse. That was 3 weeks ago. Marcus still hadn't found a replacement, and Maria suspected he wasn't really looking anymore. Now she sits beside Daniel's bed every day, doing what the nurses did, administering medications, monitoring vitals, keeping him comfortable. But she does something the others never did. She talks to him. Really talks, not baby talk or medical jargon. Just conversation, like he's still the boy she's known for 5 years, not a diagnosis, not a dying patient. "Hey, Daniel," she says softly, adjusting his pillow. "I brought you something today." She pulls a book from her bag. "The Martian. You loved the movie, remember? I thought maybe you'd like the book too. It's about a man who refuses to give up. Even when everyone thinks he's dead, he just keeps fighting, keeps trying, keeps believing rescue is coming." Daniel doesn't respond, hasn't responded in days, but Maria opens the book anyway and starts reading aloud. She knows Marcus is watching on camera, knows he's probably confused about why she's reading to an unconscious child, but she doesn't care, because Maria made herself a promise when Sophia died. She promised that if God ever gave her another chance to love a child, to show up for a child who needed someone, she wouldn't run from it. She wouldn't protect herself from the pain. She'd lean into it. She'd choose love even when love meant loss. Daniel is dying. Maria knows this, accepts this. The doctors have given him days, maybe hours. But until those hours are gone, until Daniel takes his last breath, Maria will be here, reading to him, talking to him, loving him. Not because it's her job, not because she's being paid, because some promises are bigger than pain. And this is hers. Maria does something the nurses never did. She brings music, not hospital-approved therapeutic recordings, real music, soft piano pieces, classical guitar. Sometimes she even hums along, her voice low and gentle. Marcus watches on camera, frowning. This isn't protocol. The hospice guidelines specifically state minimal stimulation, quiet environment, focus on comfort only. But Maria ignores the guidelines. She plays Debussy in the afternoons, Spanish lullabies in the evenings, sometimes just instrumental pieces with no words, filling the silence that's been suffocating the penthouse for months. And Daniel, who hasn't moved in days, who the doctors say is barely conscious, turns his head slightly toward the sound. Marcus rewinds the footage, watches it again. Daniel definitely moved. Not much, just a small shift, but movement nonetheless. The next day, Maria brings flowers, fresh flowers from the bodega on the corner. Nothing expensive, just simple daisies in a glass vase. She sets them on the table beside Daniel's bed. "Your mom loved daisies," she tells him softly. "Did you know that? She always had them in the kitchen, said they reminded her that simple things are often the most beautiful." Marcus didn't know that. He'd been married to Elena for 8 years and never noticed what flowers she preferred. Maria spends the afternoon rearranging Daniel's room. Nothing major, just small changes. Moving the bed slightly so sunlight hits his face in the morning, opening the curtains wider, bringing in a soft blanket she'd knitted herself. "The hospital blankets are too stiff," she explains to Daniel, even though he can't hear her. "This one is softer. Your abuela, she taught me to make these. Every stitch is a prayer, so this blanket, it's covered in prayers for you." Marcus watches this on the feed, his coffee growing cold in his hand. Maria is breaking every rule. The hospice nurse had been clear. No unnecessary stimulation, no changes to the environment. Keep everything calm and controlled. But Maria isn't following protocol. She's doing something else entirely, something Marcus doesn't have a name for. On the third day, Maria starts talking to Daniel about heaven. "I bet your mama is there waiting for you," she says gently, wiping his forehead with a cool cloth. "I bet she's been watching over you this whole time, so proud of how brave you've been." Marcus tenses. He's not religious, hasn't been to church since Elena's funeral, doesn't want his son's last days filled with fairy tales about afterlife. But Maria continues. "My daughter Sophia, she's there too. She was 3 when she died. I think she and your mama are probably friends by now. I like to imagine them together, laughing, waiting for us." Daniel's hand twitches. Small movement, barely noticeable. But Marcus sees it on camera. "When you get there," Maria whispers, tears in her eyes, "tell them I love them. Tell them I'm trying to be brave down here. Tell them I'm doing my best." Daniel's fingers move again. Just slightly, but they move. Marcus leans closer to the screen. This can't be right. The doctors said Daniel's neurological function was shutting down. Said he probably couldn't hear anything, couldn't process stimuli, was essentially gone already. But his son is responding to music, to flowers, to Maria's voice talking about heaven and mothers and love. The next morning, Marcus walks into Daniel's room earlier than usual. Maria is already there, of course. She's been arriving before sunrise lately, staying long past her shift ends. She's doing something Marcus has never seen any caregiver do. She's gently massaging Daniel's hands, working each finger slowly, talking to him the whole time. "The physical therapist at the hospital, she taught me this," Maria explains without looking up. "Helps with circulation, keeps the muscles from getting too stiff. Even if you can't move on your own, mijo, we can still help your body feel better." "He can't feel that," Marcus says from the doorway, his voice flat. "His pain receptors are compromised." Maria finally looks up. "Maybe. Maybe not. But I promised him I'd keep trying. So I keep trying." Marcus wants to tell her to stop, wants to say she's wasting her time, giving false hope, breaking protocol for no reason. But then Daniel's eyes flutter, just for a second. Just enough to show he's still in there somewhere. Maria smiles, wiping tears. "That's right, baby. I see you. I know you're still here." That night, Marcus watches the footage from earlier. Watches Maria work on Daniel's hands with infinite patience. Watches his son's tiny response. Watches Maria's face light up like she'd just witnessed a miracle. And Marcus realizes something that makes his chest tighten. Maria isn't following hospice protocol. She's doing something the doctors never prescribed. She's operating on belief, not data. She's refusing to let Daniel go quietly. She's fighting for every moment, every tiny response, every sign of life. And impossibly, unbelievably, Daniel is fighting back. Marcus can't stop watching the footage. Every night he sits in his study reviewing the day's recordings, not looking for theft anymore, not searching for betrayal, just watching Maria with Daniel, trying to understand what's happening, because something is happening. On day 4, Daniel opens his eyes, fully. For the first time in a week, his eyes open and track movement. When Maria walks across the room, Daniel's gaze follows her. Marcus rewinds the footage 3 times. The doctors said this was impossible, said Daniel's brain function was deteriorating, that consciousness was fading, that he'd likely never be fully aware again. But his son's eyes are open, alert, aware. On day 5, Daniel's vitals improve, not dramatically but measurably. His heart rate stabilizes, his breathing becomes less labored. The oxygen saturation levels that had been dropping steadily for weeks suddenly plateau. The hospice nurse notices during her visit. "I don't understand," she says, checking the monitors. "His numbers are better. Not much, but better. Has anything changed?" Marcus doesn't answer, because the only thing that's changed is Maria. On day 6, something happens that makes Marcus's hands shake as he watches the playback. Maria is reading to Daniel again, that same book about the astronaut stranded on Mars. She's halfway through a chapter when she pauses. "You know what I love about this story?" she says softly. "Everyone thinks Mark Watney is dead. They give up on him, write him off. But he refuses to accept it. He just keeps fighting, keeps believing, keeps trying." She touches Daniel's hand gently. "Just like you, mijo. Everyone says it's over, but I don't believe that. I think you're still fighting. I think there's still hope." And then Daniel does something impossible. His fingers curl around Maria's hand, deliberately, intentionally, squeezing gently. Marcus drops his coffee mug. It shatters on his desk, brown liquid spreading across papers, but he doesn't notice. He's frozen, staring at the screen. Daniel squeezed her hand. His son, who hasn't moved voluntarily in over a week, who the doctors said had minimal neurological function remaining, just squeezed Maria's hand in response to her voice. Marcus replays it 5 times, 10 times, 20. Each time the same result. Clear, intentional movement, communication. His son is still in there, still present, still fighting. The next morning, Marcus does something he hasn't done in months. He calls Dr. Reeves, the neurologist who'd delivered Daniel's final prognosis. "I need you to come to the house," Marcus says. Daniel's showing responses, movement, awareness. There's a pause. "Marcus, I know how difficult this is, but sometimes families see what they want to see in the final days. The body can have involuntary responses that seem purposeful, but it's not involuntary. I have it on video. Clear, intentional movement. I need you to examine him." Another pause. "I'll come this afternoon." Dr. Reeves arrives at 3. Marcus meets him at the door, tablet in hand with the footage already cued. "Watch this," Marcus says, pressing play. The doctor watches silently, once, then again. His expression shifts from skepticism to confusion, to something Marcus can't quite read. "That's definitely intentional movement," Dr. Reeves says slowly. But Marcus, his last scan showed significant deterioration. The tumor was compressing his motor cortex. He shouldn't be able to. "Just examine him, please." They walk to Daniel's room. Maria is there, of course, sitting beside the bed, humming softly. "Mrs. Rodriguez, this is Dr. Reeves. He needs to examine Daniel." Maria stands, stepping back to give the doctor space. But she doesn't leave the room, just stands in the corner, watching quietly. Dr. Reeves performs a neurological assessment, checks pupil response, tests reflexes, evaluates cognitive function. "Daniel," the doctor says clearly, "if you can hear me, squeeze my hand." Nothing happens. Dr. Reeves tries again. "Daniel, can you squeeze my hand?" Still nothing. The doctor looks at Marcus with sympathy. "I'm sorry. Sometimes these apparent responses are—" "Try asking him about his mother," Maria says quietly from the corner. Dr. Reeves turns. "Excuse me?" He responds to emotional connection, not clinical commands. "Ask him about his mother." The doctor looks skeptical but turns back to Daniel. "Daniel, your father told me you've been thinking about your mom lately. If you can hear me, if you remember her, squeeze my hand." Daniel's fingers move, curl around the doctor's hand. Squeeze gently but unmistakably. Dr. Reeves goes completely still. That's not possible." "Do it again," Marcus says, his voice tight. "Ask him again. Daniel, do you know your father is here? If you can hear his voice, squeeze my hand." Another squeeze, stronger this time. Dr. Reeves pulls back, staring at Daniel like he's seeing a ghost. "I don't understand. The scans showed his brain function was... This shouldn't be happening." "But it is happening," Maria says softly, "because he's not ready to leave yet. He's still fighting." The doctor runs more tests. Each one shows the same thing. Daniel is conscious, aware, responding to stimuli in ways that should be impossible given his condition. "I need to run new scans," Dr. Reeves says finally, immediately. "Whatever's happening, we need to understand it." They schedule the MRI for the next morning. Marcus barely sleeps that night, hope and fear warring in his chest. The results come back 2 days later. Marcus sits in his study, Dr. Reeves on speakerphone, barely breathing as he waits for the verdict. "Marcus, I've reviewed the scans 3 times. I've had 2 colleagues review them independently. We're all seeing the same thing." "What? What are you seeing?" "The tumor hasn't grown. In fact, it's slightly smaller than the last scan. Not dramatically, but measurably, and the swelling around the tumor has decreased significantly." Marcus can't speak, can't process what he's hearing. "I don't know how to explain this," Dr. Reeves continues. "Glioblastomas don't shrink on their own. They don't stabilize without treatment. But Daniel's tumor is doing both. His neurological function is improving. His cognitive responses are stronger. It's like his brain is healing." "How?" Marcus whispers. "We stopped all treatments months ago. There's nothing that could—" "I don't know. Maybe his body is mounting some kind of immune response we don't understand. Maybe there's a mechanism we haven't discovered. Or maybe—" The doctor trails off. "Maybe what?" "Maybe we were wrong about the timeline. Maybe Daniel has more fight in him than we realized." After Marcus hangs up, he sits alone in his study, staring at the wall. 2 weeks, that's what they'd said. 2 weeks to live, and that was 3 weeks ago. Daniel should be dead. Should have died days ago, but he's not dead. He's improving. And the only variable that's changed is Maria. Maria, who breaks protocol, who plays music and brings flowers and talks about heaven and refuses to treat Daniel like he's already gone. Maria, who somehow, impossibly, is doing what millions of dollars in medical care couldn't do. She's bringing his son back to life. It happens at 2 in the morning on a Thursday. Marcus can't sleep. Hasn't really slept in days. So he does what he always does. Opens his laptop, pulls up the security feed. The penthouse is dark except for the glow of medical equipment in Daniel's room. Maria should have left hours ago. Her shift ended at 6, but she's still there. Marcus watches her on camera, sitting beside Daniel's bed, holding his hand, praying quietly. She's been doing this every night, staying long after she's supposed to leave, keeping vigil. Marcus is about to close the laptop when something on the screen makes him freeze. Daniel is moving, not just fingers twitching, not just small responses, actually moving. He's pushing himself up in bed. Marcus's heart stops. He leans closer to the screen, certain he's seeing things. But no, Daniel is sitting up. Slowly, shakily, but definitely sitting up. Maria stands quickly, supporting him. "Easy, mijo. Slow, that's it." Daniel's lips move. Marcus can't hear what he's saying through the audio feed, but he's speaking. Actually speaking. Maria's face transforms, pure joy. She's crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes," she says. "Yes, baby, you're doing it. You're really doing it." Daniel says something else. Maria nods, wiping tears. "Your papi, he's sleeping, but he's going to be so happy when he sees you tomorrow. So happy." Daniel shakes his head, says something more insistent. Maria hesitates, then nods. Okay, I'll get him. Just sit still. Don't try to move too much yet." She turns toward the door, and Marcus is already running. He doesn't remember leaving his study, doesn't remember sprinting down the hallway. Just suddenly he's at Daniel's door, bursting through, and his son is sitting up in bed, pale and weak, but undeniably, impossibly awake. "Dad?" Daniel's voice is hoarse from disuse, barely above a whisper, but it's his voice, his son's voice. Marcus can't move, can't breathe, can't process what he's seeing. "Daniel?" he whispers. "I'm still here. Daniel says and smiles. A weak, tired smile, but real. I'm still here, Dad. Marcus's knees buckle. He grabs the doorframe to keep from falling, his vision blurring with tears. Maria catches his arm, steadying him. He's been waking up gradually over the past hour, getting stronger. It's like something just shifted. Marcus stumbles forward, dropping to his knees beside the bed. He reaches out with shaking hands and touches Daniel's face, needing to confirm he's real. This is real, not a dream or hallucination. You were dying, Marcus chokes out. Everyone said. I heard you, Daniel whispers. All those nights, I heard you talking to me, and I heard her. He looks at Maria. She told me not to give up, told me to keep fighting. Marcus looks up at Maria, standing there with tears streaming down her face, and finally understands. She didn't just care for his son. She saved him. With nothing but presence and love and refusal to accept the impossible, she brought his son back from death itself. How? Marcus whispers. How did you know what to do? Maria shakes her head. I didn't know. I just refused to let him go alone. Refused to let him think no one was fighting for him. She kneels beside Marcus, taking Daniel's other hand. You did this, mijo. You're the one who fought. You're the one who's strong. Daniel's smile widens slightly. Can I have pancakes tomorrow? And Marcus breaks completely, laughing and crying at the same time, pulling his son into the gentlest hug, terrified of hurting him but unable to not hold him. Yes, he sobs. Yes, you can have anything you want. Anything. Daniel hugs back, his thin arms weak but present. Real. Alive. Marcus looks over Daniel's shoulder at Maria and mouths 2 words. Thank you. She just nods, crying silently, and for the first time in months, the penthouse doesn't feel like a tomb. It feels like a home where miracles still happen. 3 days pass. Daniel grows stronger each day, eating solid food, sitting up without help, laughing at jokes. The doctors are baffled. Spontaneous remission, they call it. Unprecedented recovery. But Marcus knows the truth. It wasn't spontaneous. It was Maria. And that knowledge eats at him. Every time Daniel calls for Maria before calling for him. Every time his son's face lights up when she enters the room. Every time Marcus realizes a stranger accomplished what he couldn't. His son was dying and the housekeeper saved him. The shame becomes unbearable. On the 4th morning, Marcus walks into Daniel's room and finds Maria, helping him take his first steps. Daniel is laughing, leaning on her, taking tiny, shuffling steps across the room. Look, Dad, I'm walking. But all Marcus sees is his own failure, his absence, his emotional abandonment. Maria, I need to speak with you, he says coldly, outside. In the hallway, Marcus's voice is ice. You're overstepping, getting too attached. It's inappropriate. Maria stares at him. Inappropriate? I saved his life. You're the housekeeper, not his mother. You need to maintain professional boundaries. Professional boundaries? Maria's voice cracks. I sat with him every night while you hid in your study. I fought for him when you'd given up. And now that he's alive, you want me to step back? I want you to remember your place. The words hang between them, ugly and brutal. Maria's face goes very still. My place, of course. I'm just the help. She walks back into Daniel's room, collects her bag, and kneels beside him. I have to go, mijo, but you keep fighting, okay? Where are you going? Daniel's voice rises with panic. You said you'd stay. I'm sorry, baby. She kisses his forehead, crying. Sometimes we don't get to keep the people we love. She leaves without looking at Marcus. Daniel's regression is immediate. By that evening, he's withdrawn, won't eat, won't speak. By the next morning, his vitals start declining again. Where's Maria? He whispers, tears streaming down his face. I want Maria. Marcus watches his son slip away again and realizes what he's done. He destroyed the only person who truly loved them both. Marcus finds Maria's address in her employment file, a small apartment in the Bronx. He drives there at midnight, knocks on her door. She opens it, eyes red from crying. "Mr. Ashford, he's asking for you. He's getting worse. Please, I'm begging you, come back." "So I can be told my place again? So I can be reminded I'm just the help?" "You're not the help." Marcus's voice breaks. "You're the person who saved my son when I'd given up, who loved him when I was too broken to, who showed me what being a father actually means." He drops to his knees on her doorstep. "I was jealous, ashamed. My son was dying and I couldn't save him, but you did. And I couldn't handle that a housekeeper succeeded where a billionaire failed." Maria wipes her eyes. "You want me to come back as what?" "As family, as the person Daniel needs, as the person we both need." He looks up at her. "Please, I can't lose him again, and I can't lose you either." She studies his face for a long moment, then nods. "Okay, but things change. You don't get to hide anymore. You show up. You be present. You be his father." "I will, I promise." Maria walks into Daniel's room at sunrise, his eyes open and his face transforms. "You came back." "I'll always come back, mijo, always." Marcus stands in the doorway watching them embrace and doesn't feel jealous anymore, just grateful. 3 months later, Daniel's scans show continued improvement. The tumor is shrinking. His prognosis has changed from weeks to years. The doctors call it a medical miracle. Marcus calls it Maria. She's no longer the housekeeper. She's family. Eats dinner with them, joins them for movie nights, tucks Daniel in every evening. One night, Daniel looks up at both of them and says, "I'm glad I didn't die, because then I'd never have known what it's like to have 2 people who really love me." Marcus reaches for Maria's hand, squeezes it gently. "We're the lucky ones," he says, looking at her, "because you taught us what love actually means." Maria smiles through tears. It means showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Daniel falls asleep between them, breathing steady and strong. And in that quiet moment, Marcus understands what he'd been too blind to see before. The greatest wealth isn't money or success. It's the people who refuse to leave when everyone else walks away. It's the love that stays. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.